I was on the Zoom call when Brooke Hendricks announced they were recording everything. The founder's daughter had just been promoted to VP of Operations 3 weeks ago, and now she was firing me in front of 12 executives. She accused me of security protocol violations, her voice dripping with false concern. I stayed calm and held up a small black USB key. Dennis, our CTO, stood so fast his chair crashed backward. His face went white. He stammered, "That's not the master token, right?" I smiled slightly. Every executive on that screen froze in horror. The silence on that Zoom call stretched for maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like an hour. I could see Dennis sweating even through the grainy video feed. Brooke recovered first, straightening her shoulders like she'd practiced this moment in front of a mirror. "Alexandra, that is company property," she said, her voice steady but tight. "You need to surrender it immediately." I'd worked at SecureTech Solutions for 6 years. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, relationships that withered because I was always at the office or on my laptop at 2 in the morning. I'd built the entire cybersecurity architecture for our Department of Defense contract from the ground up. 18 months of my life had disappeared into that project. $300 million. That was the value of the contract we were about to win. The award ceremony was in 72 hours. And now Brooke, who'd been working at her father's company for less than a year, was firing me. "I don't think so," I said quietly. Richard Hendricks, the founder and Brooke's father, sat in his home office somewhere in Connecticut. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his leather chair, but he didn't say a word. He was 61 years old, built this company from nothing, and now he was letting his daughter destroy the person who'd made his biggest success possible. Patricia Chen, our general counsel, cleared her throat. She was reading from a prepared document. I could see it in her hand. "Alexandra, we're terminating your employment effective immediately for gross misconduct and theft of company property. You accessed client systems from unauthorized locations on 17 separate occasions. You copied proprietary code to personal devices. You violated your NDA and put national security at risk." The accusations were so absurd I almost laughed. Almost, but my throat was too tight. "None of that is true," I managed to say. "We have logs," Patricia continued, not even looking at the camera. "We have timestamps. We have evidence. Your behavior has been erratic and concerning for weeks." That was when I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned, carefully planned. "You'll need to return all company property within 1 hour," Brooke said. "That includes the master token you're holding. If you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to involve law enforcement." I looked at Dennis again. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at his desk. "I'll be gone in 1 hour," I said. "I'll leave all company property on my desk except this." I held up the key again. Let them all see it clearly. "This stays with me until we talk about what's really happening here." Brooke opened her mouth to respond, but I clicked the leave button. The Zoom screen disappeared. My hands were shaking. I sat in my home office, surrounded by boxes of documentation, whiteboards covered in network diagrams, 3 monitors displaying code I'd written. My apartment in Alexandria, Virginia was small, just a 1-bedroom, but I'd turned the second room into my workspace. Now I had to pack it all up in under an hour. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Webb, one of my colleagues on the infrastructure team. We'd worked together for 4 years. I trusted him. The text said, "Check your email. Forwarding you something. Don't reply to this." I opened my personal email on my phone. Marcus had sent screenshots from the company's internal communication system, messages between Brooke and Patricia, messages going back 3 weeks. I read them twice to make sure I understood. Brooke had been planning this firing for almost a month. The plan was laid out in detail. Document fake security violations, build a case for termination with cause, fire me right before the federal contract was awarded, then take credit for my work. The messages were explicit. Brooke wrote, "Once Alexandra is gone, I'll present the security architecture to the DoD evaluators as a team effort with me as lead. She'll have no standing to dispute it because she'll be fired for cause. Dad will finally see I can run major projects." I felt sick. There were more screenshots. Brooke had been systematically planting false evidence in the system logs. She'd been accessing the network using my credentials somehow, making it look like I was working from unauthorized locations. She'd copied files to simulate data theft. She'd built an entire false narrative. And I'd been so focused on finishing the project that I hadn't noticed. I called Richard's office directly. His assistant, Helen, answered after 2 rings. "I need to speak with Richard right now," I said. "I'm sorry, Alexandra, but Mr. Hendricks is unavailable and has been instructed not to take your calls." The line went dead. I tried Dennis next. He answered on the 4th ring. His voice was barely a whisper. "Alexandra, I can't talk to you." "Dennis, you know this is wrong. You know I built that entire system. You've seen my work." "I have 3 kids," he said. "I have a mortgage. Brooke told me if I help you in any way, I'm gone too. I'm sorry. I can't risk it." He hung up. I sat there in my office, surrounded by 6 years of my professional life, and realized I was completely alone. The executives I'd worked with, the colleagues I'd helped, the company I'd devoted myself to, they'd all abandoned me in less than an hour. I started packing. I had files to protect, documentation to secure, evidence to preserve. I wasn't going to make this easy for them. 45 minutes later, I was carrying a box of my personal items out of the building. My badge wouldn't work at the exit turnstile. The light flashed red. Security had already deactivated it. A guard I didn't recognize came over. "I need to escort you out, ma'am." He walked me through the lobby like I was a criminal. Other employees stared. Word had already spread. When I pushed through the front doors, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Brooke was standing in the parking lot with a camera crew. A tech industry journalist I recognized, someone from TechCrunch, was interviewing her. The camera was rolling. I could hear Brooke's voice carrying across the parking lot, bright and confident. "I'm so proud of the team I led on this project. Securing the largest federal cybersecurity contract in SecureTech's history has been the highlight of my career. My father gave me this opportunity, and I'm grateful I could prove myself. The DoD has been incredible to work with." The contract hadn't even been awarded yet. The ceremony was in 3 days. But Brooke was already claiming victory. Already rewriting history. The journalist was eating it up, nodding, asking follow-up questions about Brooke's leadership approach and her vision for the company's future. I stood there holding my box, watching my work being stolen in real time, and understood that this was bigger than a wrongful termination. Brooke was building a media narrative. By the time the contract was officially awarded, every tech publication would have already published stories about how brilliant Brooke Hendricks led this groundbreaking project. No one would believe it was mine. I walked to my car, put the box in the trunk, and drove away. I used $8,000 of my savings to hire Janet Rosewood. She was an employment attorney in Washington, D.C., who specialized in wrongful termination cases. Her office was small but professional, overlooking K Street. She had a wall full of diplomas and certificates. Harvard Law, 20 years of experience. She looked confident when I first explained my situation. "You have a strong case," she said after our initial consultation. "Federal contracts have specific protections for employees who work on them. If you can prove you were the primary architect of this system, and that you were terminated without cause, SecureTech will have to settle, probably for significant money." I showed her everything. My employment contract, which I'd kept copies of, my work logs, meticulously maintained over 18 months, every email exchange with the DoD evaluators, every design document I'd written, the complete architecture of the security system with my digital signature on every major component. Janet smiled. "This is excellent documentation. Most clients don't have anything close to this." She filed a wrongful termination claim the next day. She also sent a formal letter to SecureTech, requesting all documents related to my termination and demanding a settlement conference. SecureTech's response came within 48 hours. Patricia delivered it personally, or rather, her law firm did. It was a thick envelope, delivered by courier to Janet's office. I was there when she opened it. Inside was a cease and desist letter, 10 pages long. Janet read it, her expression getting darker with each page. "They're claiming you violated your NDA by taking proprietary documents when you left," she said. "They're threatening to sue you for theft of trade secrets, corporate espionage. They're demanding you return all documentation immediately and surrender the master token." But those are my work files, I said. I created them. The contract says anything you create while employed belongs to the company, Janet said. She kept reading. Oh no. What? They're threatening criminal charges. They say if you don't comply within 72 hours, they'll refer the matter to the FBI for theft of government property. The room felt like it was tilting. This is aggressive, Janet said. Very aggressive. Honestly, I've never seen a company respond this hard to a wrongful termination claim. They're trying to scare you into dropping everything. Will it work? I asked. Janet hesitated. Criminal charges are expensive to defend against. Even if you're innocent, legal fees can run into the hundreds of thousands. And if they make these accusations publicly, it could destroy your reputation regardless of the outcome. Over the next week, things got worse. Securitech produced documents showing I'd signed off on multiple security breaches, forms authorizing improper access to client systems, acknowledgments of policy violations. Each one had my electronic signature. I'd never signed these documents. I'd never even seen them. Someone forged these, I told Janet. They used my credentials to generate fake signatures. Janet looked worried. Proving digital forgery is incredibly difficult. You'd need expert witnesses, forensic analysis. It could take months and cost a fortune. And even then, juries don't always understand the technology. The legal bills were piling up. I'd already spent $15,000 and we hadn't even gotten to a hearing yet. Then, Securitech filed a motion for a temporary restraining order. The hearing was in federal court in D.C. I sat next to Janet at the plaintiff's table while Securitech's lawyers, 4 of them from a major firm, sat across from us. Their lead attorney was a woman named Michelle Harper. She was maybe 50, impeccably dressed, and she spoke to the judge like they were old friends. Your Honor, Miss Alexandra is in possession of a master encryption token that provides access to classified Department of Defense systems. She refuses to return it despite repeated requests. She's a disgruntled former employee who was terminated for cause, and she now poses a threat to national security. We're requesting the court order her to surrender the token immediately. The judge, a man in his 60s named Judge Morrison, looked at me over his reading glasses. Miss Alexandra, do you have this token? I stood up. Janet had coached me on what to say. Yes, Your Honor. But it's not a threat. I created the security system. The token is necessary to prove that I'm the architect of the work that Securitech is trying to claim as their own. Judge Morrison frowned. That sounds like an intellectual property dispute, not a reason to possess what the government considers classified material. Your Honor, Janet said, standing quickly. My client hasn't had adequate time to prepare a defense. This motion was filed only 3 days ago. The national security implications are time-sensitive, Michelle countered smoothly. The federal contract is being finalized this week. Every day, Miss Alexandra retains this token, increases the risk of a security breach. Judge Morrison thought for maybe 30 seconds. I'm granting the temporary restraining order. Miss Alexandra, you have 24 hours to surrender the master token to Securitech or face contempt of court charges. We'll schedule a full hearing on the underlying employment issues in 30 days. The gavel came down. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. 24 hours. If I gave up the token, I lost all leverage. Securitech would complete the federal contract. Brooke would become a tech industry star, and I'd be remembered as the employee who got fired for security violations. But if I didn't surrender it, I'd go to jail. That night, I met Janet at her office at 8 o'clock. I'd made my decision. I couldn't go to jail. I had to surrender the token and hope we could win the wrongful termination case later. Janet looked relieved when I told her. You're making the right choice, she said. We'll fight this through the proper channels. It'll take time, but we'll prove your case. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. I need to take this, she said. She stepped out of her office. I could hear her voice through the door, but not the words. When she came back in, she looked like she might be sick. Alexandra, I have to withdraw as your attorney. What? That was the managing partner at Miller & Strauss. That's Securitech's law firm. They just offered me a partnership. It's a huge opportunity. But I can't represent you while simultaneously working for their firm. It's a conflict of interest. I stared at her. They bought you off. It's not like that, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. This is a legitimate career opportunity. I'm sorry, but I have to take it. I'll refer you to another attorney who can help. I can't afford to start over with someone new, I said. I've already spent everything I have on legal fees. Janet looked genuinely sorry, but not sorry enough to stay. I walked out of her office at 9:15 that night. The court order required me to surrender the token by noon the next day. I had no lawyer, no money left for legal fees, and no options. I sat in my car in the parking garage and cried for the first time since this started. The FBI knocked on my apartment door at 7 in the morning. I was still in my pajamas, hadn't slept, was drinking my third cup of coffee, and trying to figure out what to do about the court order. When I looked through the peephole and saw 2 people in dark suits holding badges, my stomach dropped. I opened the door. Miss Alexandra? The woman was in her 40s, blonde hair pulled back severely. I'm Special Agent Thompson, and this is Special Agent Yates. We're with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. We have a warrant to search your residence. She handed me papers. I tried to read them, but the words swam. Counterintelligence. That was spies. Foreign governments. I don't understand, I said. Agent Yates was younger, maybe early 30s. He had kind eyes, but his voice was all business. We're investigating whether you've been selling federal security secrets to foreign governments. We need to search your apartment and seize your electronic devices. The world tilted. That's insane, I said. I haven't sold anything to anyone. Then you have nothing to worry about, Agent Thompson said. But she was already walking past me into my apartment. The next 2 hours were a nightmare. They went through everything. They took my laptop, my backup computer, my tablet, my phone, my external hard drives, everything. They photographed my home office. They took my notebooks, my files, even my desk calendar. Agent Thompson sat me down at my kitchen table while Agent Yates continued searching. She opened a folder and showed me documents. We have evidence that you've been communicating with IP addresses registered in Eastern Europe, she said. Specifically, addresses associated with known foreign intelligence operatives. We have bank records showing you received payments from shell companies based overseas. We have travel records showing you took a trip to Prague last year. Would you like to explain any of this? My mouth was dry. I worked with an international team of security researchers on the federal project. The communications were part of my job. The payments were for consulting work I did on weekends for a European tech company. I reported it all on my taxes. The Prague trip was for a cybersecurity conference. SecureTech approved the travel. Agent Thompson wrote notes. That's convenient. But here's what we see. A disgruntled employee who got fired 3 days ago. An employee who refused to return government security credentials. An employee with connections to foreign entities and unexplained overseas payments. You fit a profile, Miss Alexandra. A profile? Someone who might be motivated to sell secrets for money. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Call SecureTech. Call the DoD. They'll confirm I was authorized to work with international researchers. We have called them, Agent Yates said, coming back into the kitchen. SecureTech says you were explicitly told not to communicate with foreign nationals about the project. They say the overseas payments were never disclosed to them. They say you went to Prague without authorization. That's not true, I said. But even as I said it, I realized what had happened. SecureTech had lied to the FBI. They'd turned my legitimate work into evidence of espionage. Agent Thompson leaned forward. Here's what I can offer you. If you cooperate fully, if you surrender the master token right now, if you tell us everything about your foreign contacts, we might be able to recommend leniency to the U.S. attorney. But if you don't cooperate, if you keep playing games, we'll recommend charges for espionage, theft of government property, and obstruction of justice. Those charges carry up to 20 years in federal prison. 20 years. I thought about my parents in Ohio. My dad was a retired Marine. This would kill him. I need to talk to a lawyer, I said. That's your right, Agent Yates said. He handed me a card. You have 48 hours to decide whether to cooperate. But I'll tell you something off the record. He glanced at Agent Thompson, who was packing up her folder. Something about this case doesn't smell right to me. If you have evidence that clears you, now's the time to find it. They left with 4 boxes of my possessions. I sat in my empty apartment and tried to think, but I couldn't. My mind was white noise. My phone buzzed. My old phone, the one they didn't take because it was in my coat pocket, a news alert. The headline made me want to vomit. Defense contractor employee under federal investigation for espionage. The article didn't name me, but it had enough details that anyone in the industry would figure it out within hours. Female cybersecurity architect, recently terminated, working on DoD contract. Under investigation by FBI counterintelligence. My phone started ringing. Colleagues, friends, my mother. I couldn't answer. I just stared at the screen as call after call came in. Then my landlord called. I answered that one. Alexandra, I'm so sorry, but I have to ask you to vacate the apartment. The FBI investigation makes you a security risk. We have other tenants who work for government agencies. I'm giving you 72 hours notice. You can't evict me in 72 hours, I said. That's not legal. I checked with my lawyer. Under the circumstances, I can. I'm sorry. He hung up. I was losing my home, my career, my freedom, my reputation, and I still had the master token, which now felt like a bomb in my possession. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was being systematically destroyed. And the worst part was knowing that in 3 days, SecureTech would be awarded that $300 million contract. Brooke would be celebrated as a genius, and I'd be remembered as a traitor. I couldn't stay in my apartment. Even though I had 72 hours, I felt like the walls were closing in. I packed a bag and drove to Maryland, to my cousin Emma's house in Silver Spring. Emma was 37, a paralegal at a nonprofit law firm. We'd been close growing up, but I hadn't seen her much in the past few years because I'd been so consumed with work. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. I saw the news, she said. Tell me everything. I did. It took 2 hours. She made coffee and listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. You need to find out what Brooke is really doing, she finally said. There's something else going on here. Companies don't frame employees for espionage just to steal credit for a project. The risk is too high. There's a bigger play. She was right. I'd been so focused on defending myself that I hadn't thought about what Brooke's actual endgame might be. I need to access the secure server, I said. Look at what they've done to the contract code since they fired me. Isn't that illegal at this point? Emma asked. Extremely. But I'm already facing 20 years in federal prison. What's one more charge? Emma let me use her computer. I set up multiple layers of encryption and routing to hide my location. Then I used the master token to access SecureTech's secure development server. It took me an hour to navigate to the right directories. The contract code was massive, millions of lines, but I knew what I'd built. I knew every module, every function, every security protocol, and I found something that made my blood run cold. Someone had added a backdoor to the authentication system. It was buried deep, disguised to look like legitimate error-handling code, but it was there. A way to bypass all security protocols and gain direct access to the DoD systems. I documented everything. Screenshots, code analysis, timestamps showing when the backdoor was added. 3 weeks ago, right after I was fired, I kept digging. I found communication logs that shouldn't have been on the server. Encrypted messages between Brooke and someone identified only as Verses. It took me another hour to crack the encryption. When I did, I had to read the messages 3 times to believe them. Brooke was working with someone named Victor Sorensen. He worked for Cyberdyne Defense, a company that had bid $200 million for the DoD contract and lost to SecureTech's $300 million bid. The messages laid out a plan. Victor would pay Brooke $5 million to sabotage the SecureTech contract by installing a backdoor. Once the DoD discovered the security flaw, the contract would be revoked. Cyberdyne would get a second chance to bid. They'd underbid SecureTech, win the contract, and make billions over the life of the project. And if the backdoor was ever discovered before then, Brooke had already set up the perfect scapegoat. Me. The forged documents, the fake security violations. Everything pointed to me as the person who'd compromised the system. I'd been set up not just to be fired, but to take the fall for a massive fraud scheme. "Emma, look at this," I said. She read over my shoulder. "Oh my God, this is a conspiracy to defraud the federal government. This is huge. I need to go to the FBI with this," I said. "Will they believe you?" Emma asked. "You're already under investigation. They think you're a spy. What if they think you're just making this up to save yourself?" She was right. I had no credibility. And the evidence I'd just gathered was obtained illegally by hacking into SecureTech's server using credentials I technically no longer had authorization to use. "They could argue you planted the back door yourself," Emma said. "With the forged documents they already have, they might be able to prove it." I felt trapped. I had evidence of a massive conspiracy, but I couldn't use it without destroying myself. My phone rang. My mother. I'd been avoiding her calls for 3 days. I answered. "Alexandra Marie, you tell me right now what's going on." My mother only used my middle name when she was terrified. "I got a call from a reporter asking about you. Something about espionage. Your father is beside himself. Is this true? Are you in trouble?" "Mom, I can't explain everything right now, but I promise you I didn't do anything wrong." "Your brother called. His commanding officer questioned him about you, about whether you'd ever asked him for classified information." "Alexandra, this is affecting his career. My younger brother, Thomas, was a lieutenant in the Navy. He was stationed in Norfolk. I never asked him for anything," I said. "Mom, this is all a setup. I'm trying to fix it." "How? How are you going to fix it? Everyone thinks you're a traitor." She was crying. I could hear my father in the background, his voice angry. "I have to go, Mom. I love you." I hung up before she could respond. Emma put her hand on my shoulder. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to try one more thing. Dennis, the CTO, he's a good person. If I show him the back door, if he sees it with his own eyes, maybe he'll help me." I sent Dennis an encrypted message through a secure channel we'd used for work. I explained what I'd found. I sent him the code snippets showing the back door. I begged him to look at it himself. 2 hours later, he responded. I looked at the code. "There's no back door. The code is clean. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. Please stop contacting me. And Alexandra, please get help. I think the stress has broken you." I stared at the message. Either the back door was hidden so expertly that even Dennis couldn't see it, or he was part of the conspiracy. Either way, I was completely alone with knowledge of a national security threat that no one believed existed. The federal contract was being finalized in 24 hours. I made a decision that night. If no one in authority would listen to me, I'd go public. I'd force them to listen. I reached out to Caroline Wright, an investigative journalist at the Washington Post. She'd written articles about defense contractor fraud before. I'd read her work. She was thorough, skeptical, fair. I sent her an encrypted email explaining everything. Within an hour, she responded. She wanted to meet. We agreed on a coffee shop in Arlington, Virginia. Public place. Lots of witnesses. I brought printouts of everything. The backdoor code. The messages between Brooke and Victor. The forged documents. The evidence of the conspiracy. Hundreds of pages. Caroline was in her 50s. Gray hair, sharp eyes. She looked like someone who didn't believe anything until she'd verified it 3 times. We sat in a corner booth. I spent 2 hours walking her through everything. She took notes. She photographed documents. She asked hard questions. "Why should I believe you?" she asked. "You're under FBI investigation. You could be making this up." "Look at the code," I said. "Have your own experts analyze it. The back door is there. And look at the communications between Brooke and Victor. Those are real." She studied the documents for a long time. "If this is true, it's the biggest defense contractor scandal in a decade," she said. "But I need to verify everything. Give me 48 hours. "The contract is being finalized tomorrow," I said. "If they install this system in DoD networks, thousands of military personnel could be at risk." "Then I'll work fast," she promised. I left that coffee shop feeling like maybe, finally, someone believed me. The next morning, the Washington Post published a story, but it wasn't the story I expected. The headline read, "Fired defense contractor employee attempts to blackmail former employer with fabricated espionage claims." I read the article 3 times, each time feeling sicker. Caroline had written that I was a disturbed, vengeful ex-employee who had forged documents to frame my former company. She quoted Richard Hendricks, expressing deep concern for Alexandra's mental health. She quoted Brooke saying how sad she was that a former colleague has chosen this destructive path. She quoted Patricia saying the company was considering legal action to protect its reputation. The article mentioned I was under FBI investigation and suggested I might be trying to deflect blame for my own crimes by inventing a conspiracy theory. Every piece of evidence I'd given Caroline was dismissed as fabricated. I called her. She didn't answer. I understood then. SecureTech had gotten to her. Either they'd threatened her, or paid her, or convinced her I was lying. It didn't matter which. The result was the same. My final attempt to expose the truth had been turned into further proof of my guilt. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Alexandra, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Bradford. I'm calling to inform you that my office is filing federal charges against you. Theft of government property, computer fraud and abuse, and obstruction of justice. These charges carry a combined maximum sentence of 15 years in federal prison. A warrant for your arrest has been issued." I couldn't speak. "If you turn yourself in voluntarily within 24 hours, we'll take that into consideration at sentencing. If you run, we'll add additional charges." He hung up. I turned on the news. My photo was on the screen. Not a mugshot, because I'd never been arrested, but a photo someone had pulled from my LinkedIn profile. The news anchor was saying, "Federal authorities have issued an arrest warrant for a former defense contractor employee accused of stealing government secrets. The FBI is asking anyone with information about her whereabouts to call their tip line." I was now a fugitive. Emma came home from work and found me sitting in her living room, staring at the TV. "You have to turn yourself in," she said. "If you run, it'll look like you're guilty. If I turn myself in, the contract gets finalized while I'm in jail. The compromise system goes live, and I'll have no way to stop it." "You can't stop it anyway," Emma said gently. "Alexandra, you have to face reality. You've lost." Maybe she was right. Maybe I had lost. But then my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, a man's voice said, "Miss Alexandra, this is Agent Yates from the FBI. Don't hang up. I believe you." I froze. "Meet me in 1 hour. Parking garage at Tyson's Corner Mall, level 3. Come alone. I'll help you prove it." The line went dead. I stared at my phone. Was this a trap? Agent Yates was part of the team investigating me. If I met him, he could arrest me immediately. But his voice had sounded genuine, and he'd said off the record before that something about my case didn't smell right. Emma was watching me. "What?" "Agent Yates wants to meet me. He says he believes me." "That's obviously a trap," Emma said. "They want you to turn yourself in." Maybe. Or maybe it was my last chance. I had 30 minutes to decide. I met Agent Yates in the parking garage at exactly 8 o'clock. I parked 3 spaces away from his car, a dark blue sedan. He was alone, standing outside his vehicle, hands visible. I approached slowly, ready to run if this was an ambush. "I'm not here to arrest you," he said immediately. "I'm here to help." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I've been investigating SecureTech independently for the past 2 days. Something about the evidence they gave us felt manufactured, too perfect. So, I started digging into Victor Sorensen." My heart jumped. "You found the connection." "I found enough to know you're telling the truth. Victor has ties to foreign intelligence services. Not directly, but through shell companies and intermediaries. If he gets access to DoD systems through this contract, he'll sell that access for billions. Then why hasn't anyone stopped this?" "Because I don't have hard proof. I have suspicions, I have patterns, but I need evidence that will hold up in court. And that evidence is on SecureTech's secure server." "I already accessed it," I said. "I have screenshots, which were obtained illegally and won't be admissible. We need to get that evidence legally, with a warrant, or with your help." "What are you proposing?" Agent Yates looked around the parking garage, making sure we were alone. We break into SecureTech tonight, together. I use my FBI credentials to get us past the first layer of security. We access the development lab, extract the backdoor code onto a clean drive, document everything properly. With me as a witness and my badge giving the evidence chain of custody, it'll be admissible. It'll be credible. That's insane, I said. You'll lose your job. You could be prosecuted. Maybe. But if I'm right, we'll stop a national security breach. That's worth the risk. I studied his face. He looked tired, determined, honest. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because I took an oath to protect this country, not to protect corrupt companies. He held out his hand. Are you in? I thought about everything I'd lost. My job, my reputation, my freedom, my family's respect. And I thought about what would happen if I did nothing. A compromised system in DoD networks, military personnel at risk, billions of dollars in fraud. I shook his hand. I'm in. We went over the plan 3 times. SecureTech's headquarters had security, but it wasn't military grade. Agent Yates could get us past the lobby by claiming he was following up on the investigation of me. Once inside, I'd use the master token to access the development lab. We'd have maybe 20 minutes before the overnight security sweep. We arrived at SecureTech at 11:15 at night. The building was mostly dark. A few lights on the upper floors where people were working late. Agent Yates showed his badge to the security guard in the lobby. FBI. I'm here to collect additional evidence related to the Alexandra investigation. The guard looked nervous, but nodded. He logged us in. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallways were empty. Our footsteps echoed on the tile floor. We were halfway to the stairwell that would take us to the 5th floor development lab when we turned a corner and ran directly into Dennis. He was carrying a coffee cup, wearing his typical hoodie and jeans. He froze when he saw us. I froze too. For a long moment, nobody moved. Dennis looked at Agent Yates' FBI badge, then at me. His face was unreadable. The lab is on 5, he said quietly. You have maybe 20 minutes before the overnight security sweep. After that, the building locks down and you'll need executive override to move between floors. He stepped aside. Thank you, I whispered. Dennis nodded once. I'm sorry I didn't help you before. I was scared. But I looked at the code again after you messaged me. You're right, there's a back door. I just didn't want to see it. We ran for the stairs. The development lab was a secure room requiring both badge access and biometric verification. I used the master token to override the security. The door clicked open. Inside, rows of workstations, servers humming in climate-controlled racks, monitors displaying code. I went directly to the main terminal. Agent Yates stood watch at the door. I accessed the contract code, navigated to the authentication module, found the back door. It was still there. I began downloading it to a clean USB drive, along with the communication logs between Brooke and Victor. The download bar moved slowly. 10%, 20%. Then alarms started blaring throughout the building. We triggered something, Agent Yates shouted over the noise. 40%. 50%. How much longer? He asked. 3 minutes. We don't have 3 minutes. Security will be here in less than 1. 60%. 70%. Agent Yates looked at me, then at the door. He made a decision. You finish the download. I'll buy you time. He ran out of the lab before I could argue. I heard shouting in the hallway. Agent Yates yelling, FBI! Stand down! But the security guards didn't stand down. I heard scuffling, more shouting. 80%. 90%. Come on. Come on. 95%. 98%. 100%. I grabbed the USB drive and ran for the emergency exit stairs. I made it down 1 flight before I heard footsteps below me. Someone was coming up. I reversed direction, went up instead. Maybe I could get to the roof, find another way down. But on the 2nd floor landing, I ran directly into Brooke. She was there with 2 security guards and Patricia. They'd been waiting for me. Brooke smiled. It was a cold, triumphant smile. Did you really think we wouldn't know you were here? She said. Agent Yates' credentials triggered an alert the moment he badged into the building. We've been watching you on camera the whole time. Patricia stepped forward. Everything you just downloaded has been legally observed by SecureTech security personnel. And here's the beautiful part. Any competent expert will testify that you planted that backdoor code yourself. You had the access. You had the knowledge. And now you've been caught red-handed, breaking into a secure facility to tamper with evidence. I was trapped. Nowhere to run. Security guards blocking both directions. Agent Yates is already in custody, Brooke continued. He'll be charged with corruption, and you'll be charged with espionage, breaking and entering, and about 12 other felonies. You're done, Alexandra. I looked at the USB drive in my hand. All that evidence. And it was worthless because I'd obtained it illegally. Then I remembered something. I pulled out my phone and opened a live stream app. Within seconds, I was broadcasting live. My name is Alexandra, I said to the camera. I'm about to be arrested for trying to expose a national security threat. If anything happens to me, the evidence is in my cloud account. The password is November 2004 Echo Delta. The viewer count was climbing. 50 people. 100. 500. Brooke's face went white. Turn that off. She lunged for my phone, but I dodged. I kept talking to the camera, explaining everything. The $300 million contract, the back door, Victor Sorensen, Brooke's conspiracy, the forged documents. 1,000 viewers. 2,000. The security guards hesitated. They knew everything was being recorded. I designed the security system for a Department of Defense contract, I said. Someone compromised it to sell access to foreign intelligence. I'm trying to stop them. But the company that hired me is trying to frame me to cover it up. 5,000 viewers. 10,000. Patricia was on her phone, frantically calling someone. Brooke was shaking with rage. You're insane. No one will believe you. They don't have to believe me, I said. They just have to ask questions. They just have to look at the code. They just have to investigate. 20,000 viewers. I backed toward the stairs, phone still streaming, explaining how to access the evidence in my cloud account. That's when the building's main doors burst open, 3 floors below. I could hear it echoing up the stairwell. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. FBI. Everyone freeze. It was Agent Thompson, Yates' partner. She came up the stairs with a full tactical team behind her. They were wearing vests, carrying weapons. Behind them, DoD security personnel in military police uniforms. Agent Thompson looked at me, at Brooke, at Patricia. This building is now under federal investigation. Nobody moves. I lowered my phone but kept the live stream running. 50,000 viewers now. Agent Yates appeared behind Thompson, looking roughed up but okay. He nodded at me. I realized then what had happened. Yates hadn't been acting alone. The break-in, the confrontation, everything had been part of an authorized operation. They needed me to lead them to the evidence because only I could access it with the master token. Agent Thompson took the USB drive from my hand. We'll take it from here. Brooke started to protest, but Thompson held up a hand. Brooke Hendricks, you're being detained for questioning regarding conspiracy to defraud the United States government. You have the right to remain silent. 50,000 people watched Brooke being read her rights on my live stream. The next 72 hours were chaos. The FBI took over SecureTech's headquarters. DoD security experts spent 3 days analyzing the contract code. They confirmed the back door. They confirmed it would have given unauthorized users access to classified military communications systems across 17 bases. Victor Sorensen was arrested at his home in McLean, Virginia. Forensic accountants traced $2 million in payments from Victor to offshore accounts controlled by Brooke. The plan had been exactly what I'd discovered. Sabotage SecureTech's contract, get it revoked, allow Cyberdyne Defense to win the rebid at a lower price, then sell backdoor access to foreign intelligence services for billions. If I'd been convicted, Brooke had planned to blame the back door on me using the forged documents. Even in prison, I would have been the scapegoat. But I'd refused to go quietly. All federal charges against me were dropped. The U.S. attorney held a press conference apologizing for the investigation. He called me a patriot who'd protected national security at great personal cost. SecureTech's board of directors held an emergency meeting. Richard and Brooke were both terminated. Patricia was fired. Dennis was named interim CEO. His first action was calling me. "Alexandra, I'm so sorry," he said, "for all of it. I should have stood up for you from the beginning." "You were scared," I said. "I understand. I want to offer you any position you want at SecureTech, any salary you name. You built this company's reputation. You deserve to be here." "Thank you, Dennis. But I don't think I can come back." He understood. The Washington Post published a correction and a full investigative report on the conspiracy. Caroline Wright was fired for ethics violations. Turns out Brooke had paid her $50,000 to write the hit piece on me. The editor-in-chief issued a personal apology. My family called. My mother cried with relief. My father, the retired Marine, told me he was proud of me. My brother said his commanding officer had commended him for having such a brave sister. The tech industry publications that had run stories about Brooke Hendricks, Rising Star, published new stories about the fraud, about how a courageous whistleblower had stopped a national security breach. My live stream had been viewed 8 million times. I became something I never wanted to be, famous. But more importantly, I was free. 6 months later, I started my own cybersecurity consulting firm. I specialized in federal contract security audits. My first client was Agent Yates. The FBI hired me to review other DoD contracts for similar vulnerabilities. Within a year, my firm had 23 employees and contracts worth millions of dollars. I was making more money than I ever had at SecureTech. But more than that, I was doing work that mattered. Work that protected people. I thought a lot about what I'd learned. I'd been fired, humiliated, investigated, charged with crimes, hunted as a fugitive. Every time I solved one problem, 3 worse problems appeared. I'd lost my job, my savings, my reputation, my home. I'd been utterly alone, but I'd never given up. Because here's what I realized. The truth is powerful, but it's not enough on its own. You have to fight for the truth. You have to be willing to risk everything to expose it, especially when powerful people want you silenced. I'd been so afraid of losing my career, my freedom, my life, and I did lose all those things temporarily. But what I gained was worth more. My integrity, my courage, my voice. 1 year after the FBI raided SecureTech, I was invited to testify before Congress about security vulnerabilities in federal contracting. I sat at a table in a hearing room, facing senators and representatives, with cameras broadcasting everything live. I held up the small black USB drive, the master token that had started everything. "This key almost destroyed my life," I told them. "But it also saved thousands of lives by stopping a national security breach. Sometimes the things that feel like burdens are actually our greatest strengths. We just have to be brave enough to use them." The hearing room was silent. "I want to say something to anyone watching who's facing injustice right now," I continued. "Who's been betrayed by people they trusted, who feels alone and powerless. Don't give up. The truth matters. Your voice matters. And sometimes the people trying to bury you don't realize that you're actually a seed, and seeds grow back stronger than ever." The committee chair thanked me for my testimony. The cameras kept rolling. I walked out of that hearing room knowing I'd done something that mattered. Not just for myself, but for everyone who'd ever been silenced, betrayed, or thrown away by powerful people protecting their own interests. $300 million. That's what the contract was worth. But my integrity, my courage, my refusal to be silenced, those were priceless. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where telling the truth cost you everything? Where powerful people tried to silence you, but you refused to back down? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else who's facing their own impossible battle right now. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that courage and integrity matter even when the cost is high, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people who faced extraordinary injustice and fought back, and share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, they can take your job, your reputation, even your freedom, but they can't take your truth. And your truth is the most powerful weapon you have. Stay strong, stay brave, and never stop fighting for what's right.